Rodrigo Roa Duterte as the mastermind, instigator, perpetrator, and the person most accountable for the human rights violations.
The next speaker is the chairman of the Committee on Human Rights, Representative Bienvenido M. Abante Jr. You are now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What do we make of sufferings of our people beyond what they can bear? Have we ever imagined in our lifetime the loss of lives of so many women, children, poor and underprivileged, some of whom had become victims of vices of drugs and wrongdoings? Many of them, perhaps all of them, who were violently shot at, were innocent until proven guilty by the courts of law. And yet, none of those thousands instantly killed during the war on drugs policy of the past administration were exacted with justice. Our Constitution declares, and I quote, "No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of law, nor shall any person be deprived the equal protection of the laws." But this constitutional provision was unceremoniously blotted out by the blood and tears of the victims of extrajudicial killings. From 7,640 illegal drug suspects who died in police operations to a total of recorded 20,322 deaths for the period of July 1, 2016 to November 27, 2017, or a daily average of 39.46 deaths. The death of one person is a tragedy. The deaths of thousands is an even greater tragedy. Isaiah 1:17 and Psalm 82 verse number 3 tell us, and I quote, "Learn to do well, seek judgment, relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow, defend the poor and fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy." Today, the journey of ferreting the truth, seeking justice and healing of our people begins with this very important meeting. Good afternoon, honorable members and chairman of the Joint Committee on Dangerous Drugs, Public Order and Safety, and Public Accounts. The Committee on Human Rights has conducted 5 public hearings and 1 briefing on the alleged extrajudicial killings, or EJKs, committed during the implementation of the war on drugs policy under the administration of former President Rodrigo Duterte. In the agenda were House Resolution number 14, introduced by Representative Raul Daniel A. Manuel, a privileged speech of Representative Castro, delivered in the plenary on November 8, 2023. Pursuant to its mandate under the rules of the House, the Committee on Human Rights is cognizant that our inquiry in aid of legislation focuses on, and I quote, "all matters directly and principally relating to the protection and enhancement of human rights, assistance to victims of human rights violations and their families, the prevention of violations of human rights, and the punishment of perpetrators of such violations." In the exercise of the constitutional powers of Congress to conduct inquiries in aid of legislation articulated in Section 21, Article 6 of the Constitution, the committee abides by the House Rules of Procedure governing inquiries in aid of legislation and have respected the rights of our witnesses of due process, interparliamentary courtesy, and legal processes required in the inquiry. Incumbent and former public officials from the Office of the President, the Philippine National Police, the Commission on Human Rights, the National Bureau of Investigation, the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, the Department of Interior and Local Government, Office of the Solicitor General, and other relevant government offices were invited and heard during the hearings to shed light on pertinent issues in the inquiry. A total of 21 relatives of victims attended the hearings, together with the Rights Up for Life and for Rights advocates and legal counsels from the National Union of People's Lawyers and Center for International Law, and narrated the circumstances surrounding the deaths of their family members. The committee likewise issued invitations to the incumbent Senator, Honorable Ronald Bato de la Rosa, as well as the former President, Digong Duterte, Attorney Harry Roque, former presidential spokesperson, DOJ Secretary Gisman Remulla, and former Solicitor General Attorney Jose Calida. However, the aforementioned personalities failed to appear before the committee. The committee has identified the following as the key issues to be resolved in our inquiry. Number one, whether human rights violations have been committed against civilians, particularly on women and children, during the implementation of the anti-illegal drugs campaign of the Duterte administration. Number two, whether the state's obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights have been fully adhered in the course of the anti-illegal drugs campaign. And number three, whether domestic and international human rights laws, instruments, and governmental policies have been adequate and responsive to the promotion, protection, and fulfillment of human rights obligations. Thus, please allow the chairperson to discuss the issues and findings in seriatim. As preparatory on the statistical data on the extrajudicial killings, the committee had been presented with multiple reports indicating that there had been massive nationwide drug-related killings within the period July 2016 to June 2022. The killings were classified to have been implemented by police operations, unknown perpetrators, similar to Sinaloa type of killings, which were notorious in Latin America drug cartel. The 2017 year-end accomplishment report of the Duterte administration highlighted as key accomplishments the deaths of 3,967 drug personalities and 16,355 homicide cases under investigation as of 30 September 2017. In addition, the PNP reported that there was a total of 7,640 illegal drug suspects who died in police operations. 2,053 of these were recorded in the first 6 months, July to December of 2016. Meanwhile, other government agencies and international human rights organizations, such as the CHR and the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, domestic human rights organizations, such as the Free Legal Assistance Group, and Third World Studies, University of the Philippines, Diliman, have their respective data vetted from their own investigations and information gathering devices. With CHR's investigation of the 3,900 cases of drug-related killings, it has observed that killings in relation to the anti-illegal drug campaign have been widespread, spanning across all administrative regions in the country. The UNOHCR reported in their report dated June 2020 that there were at least 8,663 drug-related killings as of February of 2019. Academic research from the HAS project of UP gathered around 5,348 recorded deaths. Attorney Chel Jokno of FLAG cited unassailable data which were stated in a Supreme Court en banc extended resolution that indicated that the Duterte administration's anti-drug war from July 1, 2016 to November 27, 2017 recorded a total of 20,322 deaths or a daily average of 39.46 deaths. The breakdown, which was called from the government's 2017 year-end report, yielded the following: 3,967 drug personalities who died in anti-drug operations from July 1, 2016 to November 27, 2017, and 16,355 homicide cases under investigation from July 1, 2016 to December 27, 2017. These findings of the statistical data of human rights violations leading to extrajudicial killings have been established by the committee. And although the real numbers may be varied depending on the source, what is palpable at this point is the fact that the number of killings had been highly significant to be ignored by the present government. On the first issue, it was confirmed that the police anti-illegal drug operations have resulted to multiple deaths. Number one, relatives of victims from Cebu City and Caloocan City have testified that there were PNP anti-illegal drugs simultaneous anti-criminality and law enforcement operations, or generally known as one-time, big-time operation, which resulted in multiple fatalities. It was deemed that most incidents of the said OTBT operations lacked probable cause, since the police officers did not issue warrants of arrest. Number two, there were rampant drug-related killings by unidentified perpetrators. The relatives of the victims who claimed that the assailants were unidentified as they were in civilian clothes and wore masks and bonnets. Some of the attacks were brazen, such as when assailants had intruded victims' houses and forcefully taking them or mercilessly shooting them dead, even in front of witnesses. There were those killed by unidentified men in motorcycles, or generally known as riding in tandem. There were also incidents that victims were found dead away from their houses with gunshot wounds, hands tied, or bodies wrapped in blankets. There was commonality of the targets, with victims being the drug list or perceived drug addicts. Killings were systematic, and that there was a conducive environment where perpetrators were given a sense of immunity. Number three, there were varied and suspicious drug lists being referred to by authorities. As regard the drug list, various lists, such that the former president's drug list, were referred to by the authorities, and the process of producing the said drug list and delisting certain individuals from the list were not systematic and formalized, indicating a violation on the constitutional rights to information and due process. In the study conducted by UP Third World Studies, out of the 5,348 deaths, 51% of or 2,709 victims of killings were accused of being drug pushers, and 34% or 1,831 belong to the drug watch list of the Duterte administration. Number four, Oplan Tokhang. a policy of the PNP under its command, Circular Number 16, signed in 2016, was improperly implemented. The surrenders were not voluntary, since during the random knocking of the doors or the house-to-house visits, the police would require residents to provide information and undergo drug tests. The information provided to the police through this manner was not properly validated according to regulations. The voluntary surrender was considered an extrajudicial confession when there should be a signed confession in the presence of a counsel and a trusted witness for it to become admissible in court. If the person waives a legal counsel, there should also be a signed document expressing this concern. This process was violated. The drug testing that was implemented is considered a violation of the right against self-incrimination and also a violation of the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Law, wherein drug testing should be certified by the Department of Health. Moving on to the next major issue, on whether the state's obligations to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights have been fully adhered to during the course of the anti-illegal drugs campaign. The following state testimonies came about. Number one, human rights advocates, former Senator Laila De Lima, and UPL lawyers, Attorney Nery Colmenares and Attorney Maria Cristina Conti, have identified and pointed to former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte as the mastermind, instigator, perpetrator, and the person most accountable for the human rights violations. Senator De Lima said that the drug war was implemented as an official program of the Duterte administration when he assumed office as president. He claimed that the consequent EJKs were deliberately carried out as part and parcel of the PNP Oplan double barrel upon Duterte's orders as president and chief executive from 2016 to 2022. In the academic research of UP Professor Sol Dorotea Iglesias, published in a 2023 journal Asian Politics Policy, it was shown that drug crime-related killings in the Philippines are statistically correlated with former President Duterte's term of office. Number two, the CHR, based on its investigative report, rationalized that the government has failed in its obligation to respect and protect the human rights of every citizen, in particular victims of drug-related killings, and that it has encouraged a culture of impunity that shielded perpetrators from being held to account. It can be deduced from the testimonies and reports that there is a lack of interest from the PNP to investigate on drug-related killings. Some of the victims' families were denied by police officers when they tried to report the incident or request for police reports, and some incidents were not investigated at all, while some cases also had no follow-up investigations by the police. The CHR and legal counsels of victims had also difficulties in gathering evidence from the PNP, with reference policy as an excuse to refuse access to police documents. Number three, the PNP non-filing of cases against police officers involved in incidents of death died in police operations was alarming. Of the 6,486 reported incidents of depot, Brigadier General Matthew Bakay, Director of the PNP DIDM, disclosed that PNP had not filed any criminal charges against its own personnel. There had only been 52 drug-related non-laban cases which are being investigated by NBI, and these were referred to them by the DOJ. Number 4, the reward and quota system in the PNP during the war on drugs have surfaced. Police Major Emil Garcia, former Police Community Precinct 4 Commander in Batasan, is stated on record that Police Colonel Lito Patay, former commander of Batasan Station 6, required PCP commanders of Barangay Batasan to conduct tokhang operations in at least 50 households per day. Pulitzer Prize awardee Mr. Manuel Mugato reported in his Reuters investigative series that his source admitted that the reward system and quota system existed, which have been the motivation of the police officers at that time to engage in extrajudicial killings. If the police would not execute the killings, other civilians would be hired to do the dirty job. Number 5, there exists a pattern of the evidence establishing the state-sponsored killings, public vilification of the government against the victims who were allegedly involved in drugs, brazenness of execution of the victims in public places, and complete lack of interest of government to investigate or prosecute on drug-related cases. Finally, the third issue on whether domestic and international human rights laws, instruments, and governmental policies have been adequate and responsive to the promotion, protection, and fulfillment of human rights obligations has also been addressed in the inquiry. The committee ratiocinates that there are available and adequate laws for the promotion, protection, and fulfillment of human rights obligations in the country. However, there have been problems and failures in the execution of the laws, which resulted to unsolved criminal cases involving members of the PNP, which were manifested in some of the statements of the resource persons who testified in the hearings. Number 1, interpretation of the term negation and neutralization in CMC 16-2016. The procedure for those who have not voluntarily surrendered was espoused in CMC 16-2016, Section 4, and I quote, "Any person subjected to be involved in illegal drug trafficking who denies or refuses the house-to-house visitation shall be referred to the anti-illegal drug units for immediate case build-up and negation." End of quote. Police General Oscar Abayade clarified that negation and neutralization are general terms used by the PNP, which means suspects were subjected to police operations such as arrest and the conduct of police investigation. But this was disputed by Attorney Jokno, saying that this is not the role of the police per PNP manual, rather that the police job was to collect evidence for case build-up and to arrest people engaged in criminal activity, and for them to only use lethal force in very limited circumstances. Number 2, Philippine National Police Internal Affairs Service non-observance of its duty to file criminal cases against erring PNP officers in court per Section 39, subparagraph of Republic Act number 8551. Number 3, amendments to the PNP Rules of Procedure for police operations resulted in fatalities. Lastly, the inquiry is in aid of remedial legislation. The following have been initially proposed as possible areas for legislation. Number 1, enact laws that separately penalize human rights violations committed during or as a result of anti-legal drug operations, including drug-related extrajudicial killings by law enforcement and non-law enforcement perpetrators, planting of evidence and extortion. Number 2, establishment or creation of an independent and impartial mechanism or commission to investigate and bring perpetrators of drug-related extrajudicial killings to justice. More importantly, those with command responsibilities, and provide adequate redress and reparation, rehabilitation, and support services, including access to safe houses, legal aid resources, and social and health care. Number 3, strengthen the power of the CHR to investigate cases involving human rights violations and abuses, including rightful access to police documents, right to receive regular reports of drug-related killings from concerned agencies, unhampered investigation, and prescribed criminal and administrative penalties for non-compliance. Number 4, a special law which shall define widespread abuses and violations of human rights as crimes against humanity. And number 5, mandatory autopsy of suspicious deaths. The committee considers the suggestion of former Senator De Lima, suggested that any investigation to the past administration's drug war must go back to the origins and history of the Davao Death Squad from its inception in 1988 up to 2016, because the nationwide drug war from 2016 to 2022 was an offshoot of a DDS experience in Davao. Set up an independent truth commission that will be tasked to know the facts, determine the people involved, and identify the pattern of the killings. Review Republic Act number 8551, otherwise known as the Philippine National Police Reform and Reorganization Act of 1998, particularly Section 39, subparagraph C. In sum, the Committee on Human Rights has prepared its preliminary findings in its inquiry in aid of legislation and in hopes to collaborate with the other 3 committees of the Joint Committee and achieve our noble goals for our beloved country. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Yes,
May also
Congressman
say
Manuel.
something. Yes, Mr. Chair, konting remarks lang as author of several of the measures referred to this joint committee, ang Quadcom po natin. Yours truly is an author of House Resolution number 14, ang pag-investigate po dun sa mga EJKs under the War on Drugs. House Resolution 1847 na nagsisik din ng pagbubuo ng Joint Committee. Tsaka meron din po tayo House Bill 10525 na bill po natin na gusto ding iban ang mga pogo. Tayo din po ay member ng 3 out of the 4 committees sa Public Order and Safety, Human Rights, tsaka sa Dangerous Drugs. And at first, Mr. Chair, nung una nga talaga, ang initial na perception ng mga kababayan natin ay hiwa-hiwalay yung mga issue na ito. Usapin ng pogo, yung sa drug war killings. At ngayon, Mr. Chair, mabuti at nauungkat na natin talaga na ganito pala yung mga iskema na nangyari noong nakarang administrasyon. In fact, nandiyan pa yung mga police mismo na sila yung pumapatay doon sa mga kabataan natin. Tapos may mga indicators nga as mentioned sa mga press conferences na pinanggamit para bayaran yung mga police, para gawin yung mga patayan ay pogo money pa. Tapos may mga personalities ng past administration na involved naman pala sa illegal drug trade. At andyan pa yung mga unlawful transactions to make all this possible. Ibig sabihin, Mr. Chair, kung meron tayong ilang mga gusto talaga nating maungkat dito, yung una, yung pagiging peke. No? Kailangan nating ninipeke yung drug war ng past administration. Ginamit ito, yung pagpatay sa mga mahihira bilang cover-up, na yung nangyayari palang drug war ay war laban din sa mga kalaban sa ibang mga, nasa ibang linya ng drug trade. Ganon pala yung naging iskema, kaya hindi natin talaga natumbok yung mga big names dun sa drug war. Sunod, Mr. Chair, common yung role ng police sa lahat ng mga ito. Kaya naman, in these grand, horrible schemes, kailangan yung mga top police officials ng past administration dapat ay dumalo. Kaya Mr. Chair, standing, I believe, yung invitation natin kay former PNP Chief and Senator Bato de la Rosa to answer questions. Mr. Chair, in terms of interparliamentary courtesy na gusto niyang i-invoke para hindi siya dumalo dito, we would like to inform him na merong precedent na ang isang member ng House of Representatives nga ay pumunta mismo sa Senado nung maimbitahan, former Kabataan Party List Representative Sara Ilago, dumating sa isang investigation. Which means, kung ang isang member ng House ay nakakapunta sa Senado to attend investigations, what exempts a senator na pumunta dito sa atin para din sumagot sa ating mga tanong. Pero ang ginagawa niya, Mr. Chair, kung ano-anong mga diversions, he even uses the platform of the Senate at pati yung resources ng taong bayan, Mr. Chair, for his diversions habang hindi siya dumadalo dito. Kaya, if he truly cares about Filipino families, if he truly cares about the welfare of young people, dapat umattend siya, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. So, clarify lang po natin na dahil ang invitation sa kanya ay galing sa Committee on Human Rights, I would like to clarify kung standing pa rin po ba na nung binuo na natin itong Quadcom, ang invitation sa kanya ay nandyan pa rin. Yan lang, Mr. Chair, for clarification.
Okay, thank you for that lengthy manifestation, Congressman Manuel. Answering your question tungkol dun sa standing invitation, yes, the committee recognizes that one of the member of the Quadcom has invited former Chief PNP and now Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa.
Mr. Chair, another short question.
Okay. Is this a question?
Yeah. Kasi ano lang to continuing sa mga invitation namin sa EJK sa HR.
Okay.
Dahil, Mr. Chair, kahit naman nasa Pogo kahit sa Pogo, isa lang yung responsible dito na nagbigay ng policy. Kahit sa EJK ng mga sa ating mga EJK sa sa dangerous drugs ay isa lang din yung tinutukoy na responsible. So, are we going to extend also our invitation to President Duterte since he is not already the president, and he can he should answer the queries that we are going to make from him, di ba? Kasi si Senator Bato, so meron tayong invitation, and kung mayroong parliamentary courtesy, what would be the attitude of this Quadcom regarding President Duterte, Mr. Chair?
Okay, thank you, Congresswoman Castro. The invitation sent by the chair of the Committee on Human Rights in the last committee hearing they had still stands. As I mentioned earlier, whatever actions and rulings made by the chair in relation to the issue that the Quadcom will be tackling still stands. And meaning the invitation is still extended to the former president.
Mr. Chair, follow up. What if hindi siya pumunta? Anong gagawin natin? Kung hindi siya pupunta, ano po yung gagawin natin?
Well,
Are we going to have, like yung, syempre, yung rules natin, like yung, bibigyan natin ng
Mr.
show cause
Chair?
order, contempt, are we going to use that procedure, Mr.
Sa invitation sa ating former president, it is up to the former president if he refuses to attend. Again, anybody for that matter that we wish to invite will likewise be extended courtesy. Of course, as to the next action after the courtesy is extended, then the committee must rule and approve whatever actions we wish to take. In other words, for the Senator Bato and the former president, courtesy and in deference to the former president, he should be given likewise courtesy. As to the next action, then we will have to decide on it when we come to that point.